Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 16th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting. I'll be your chair this evening. All council members are present. I will ask CEO Morris just to let us know before we get to the agenda which staff are online tonight.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, we have with us Deputy Clerk Nadine Bennett, Manager of Economic Development and Tourism Jennifer Miller, Director Troy Dunlop, Director Costello, and Director Manhire. Great,
thank you. Amendments to the agenda. Do we have any? Hearing none. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of monetary interests when you look at that agenda? I'm not seeing any. And as always, if at any time during the meeting you come to that conclusion, then please do so at that time. We have no delegations and we have no adoption of the minutes. So we're moving right on to CEO Morris and any director's reports this evening.
Given the nature of this meeting as a special committee meeting, we don't have any verbal reports this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have no correspondent items. We're delighted that hundreds of you are watching this live or at other points throughout the week, the council meetings. We're really delighted with the uptake in watching this. We are going to go in camera briefly. And please stay tuned. I know last week we were gone for quite some time. This should be very brief, and I appreciate your patience while we go in camera. And we'll be back shortly. I will seek. Do we have a motion now to go in camera? Yes, Lorraine Allen, seconded by Nikki Dwyer. All in favor? Thank you. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to our viewers and to my colleagues. We've come out of in camera and council has provided staff direction regarding the appointment of student counselors on on town council. And I believe we want to add that as a priority item this evening. And so I'm suggesting item 8G, appointment of student counselors. And I'm seeing agreement for that. Okay, so back to our regular agenda. Item 8A, the interim review of the 2-year ATV bylaw trial report. And I believe Director Dunlop's going to provide that update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a committee will recall, back on October 5th, there was a request put forward by council for staff to do a review of the ATV bylaw, in particular the performance of that regulation over the first year. Taking, I guess, council back a year ago, the first bylaw that was passed was in September 2nd of 2019. That's the bylaw that prescribed the rights for the clubs to access certain roads within the municipality. There was a second bylaw passed at that time also that identified permissive rights for the clubs to access parts of the Cataraqui Trail owned and operated by the town, as well as trail systems over the compost site. Over the last couple of weeks, we've reached out to various stakeholders, community services, police, police, bylaw enforcement, and we've reached out to try to get information on any feedback they have all received. We're very pleased to report in the first year of the operations, there's been no complaints, no noise infractions, no bylaw issues or fines issued by the local police regarding any of the operations of the OFATV on this trail system that was approved. Everybody seems to be coexisting very well in terms of the operations, which is very promising. As it stands right now, no further updates on the arrangements for this year, but we would, of course, be bringing this forward to council at the end of the 2-year pilot next year. And of course, that will end on November the 30th, 2021. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Councillor Alford.
Just one, Troy. I had reached out just to see what their feedback was or if they had any idea of usage. Have we heard anything from answered me yet? So, but he might be deer hunting. So,
through the chair, I don't have any statistics from the club on use of the trail. It's not something that we had the capabilities of tracking. But we can report back any information we receive from the club for sure.
Well, they haven't voiced any concerns, and I didn't hear back from Rick, so I'm assuming they're as happy as we are with how it's going. Thanks, Troy.
Thank you.
Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks a lot, Troy. It's great to see that this is working well so far. I know this is a really popular spot to watch the sunset, and there's a gap between the deck and the railing that somebody could fall through. I'm wondering, with the consensus of council, if we could reach out to the groups that, more of the ATV group, because the bridge isn't used by pedestrian traffic as much in the wintertime, but reach out to them and inquire about filling that gap, just so that I think if somebody was spooked as the ATV was going over and they fell into the water above the dam there, it could be a dangerous situation, and it'd be just good to get that closed up. So I don't know if anybody else is familiar with the spot. This is on private property, so it's not necessarily a town problem.
Yes,
through the chair, I think we can communicate that to the clubs, most certainly if there's an express concern, and they would have to communicate with the landowner for modifying that bridge, but most certainly we can pass those communications on for sure.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks for doing that, Director Dunlop, and it's nice to hear it's going so smoothly. Okay, thank you. 8B, the 2020 Community Grant Rideau Roundtable Report. And Deputy Clerk Bennett, are you doing this one?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. What do you want to highlight for us?
Good evening. I believe everyone's probably read the report, so I'll just quickly overview it. The request is for a community grant to the Reader Roundtable in the amount of $4,630.87. The request from the Reader Roundtable was a bit higher. However, under eligibility costs in our policy, there's the travel portion is not included as an eligible item. So that is why the request is different from what Reader Roundtable requested. Council is aware of the delegation that Mr. Rao brought forward earlier this year, and this request is as a follow-up to that presentation that was made. There is a balance in the community grant budget of $17,422. And at the beginning of the pandemic, Council reserved that funding for food security efforts. If Council is supportive of this grant, there will be $12,791.13 left in that budget item. And so tonight, the recommendation from staff is to bring forward a bylaw tonight authorizing a community grant funding agreement, again, in the amount of $4,630.87.
Questions or comments from my colleagues? Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dean. I think this is really great that the Rideau Roundtable has been able to pivot and find a use for the funds. We've got a lot of riparian zone in town, and I think it's really great how in Lower Reach Park we keep that area natural. If you're paddling or if you're walking down or sitting by the water, it's amazing how much stuff that lives there, and it's really exciting to see the Roundtable take an interest in that other lot on the other side of the river. So fully supportive of this proposal.
And everyone else is nodding, so I'm assuming we're good to go once we get into our regular council meeting after this one. Councillor Alford, did you want to?
I wasn't as familiar as the our resident conservation authority. Just me. Thank you. And
Oh dear.
often have to go to a dictionary.
Councillor Alford, we didn't get most of what you just said, unfortunately. Is that okay, or would you like to take a second? Okay, thank you. Deputy Clerk, you have that direction and we'll bring that forward later.
Yes, thank you.
Item 8C, amendments to the parking bylaw report. And Director Costello, I believe, is on this one.
Thank you. Looking for 4 quick updates to our parking bylaw to accommodate our newly developed Beckwith Street. The first revision would be to amend Schedule A to allow for the angled parking just on these sections of Beckwith that still have angled parking, which is from Russell Street up to Daniel Street. The second amendment would be to allow the 2-hour parking provision that Council recently made a decision on in the new spaces along Beckwith Street. The third revision would be to include all the new designated accessible parking spaces that have been signed and marked on the pavement. And the fourth amendment would be allowing people with the valid disabled permit to park in any 2-hour spot or any metered spot for free for the time being. So those are 4 quick fixes to our parking bylaw that we'd like to bring forward to Council for discussion this evening.
Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any objections to the amendments that Carrie's brought forward, but I do have a question. And I thought about this the other night when I was dropping the boys off at music class over on Main Street. But Carrie, can you confirm whether or not the parking meters on the side streets, many of which are no longer working, are going to be removed as part of the Beckwith Street kind of total renovation? I know we've talked about removing paid parking on Beckwith Street. But I realized that we never pointedly had a conversation about also removing meters on the side streets. And I wasn't sure kind of what staff was thinking. To me, it doesn't make any sense to continue enforcing 2-meter parking restrictions on the side streets if that's all it is, because I can't see us being cost neutral on the enforcement side. So can you provide some context for discussion there?
Certainly. So the meters are going to be removed. You are correct. There are some sporadically on the side streets, but they will be removed in the not too distant future. But for the time being, they still are considered metered spaces.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any idea when they'd be removed? Kind of spring next year, fall next year, 2 years from now?
I don't know. Director Dunlop's crew, they are the ones removing. Oh, CAO Morris has his hand up. Maybe he's got a timeline.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. So just to clarify, the resolution that council passed earlier, I think it was in September, was to eliminate paid parking in the downtown on street. So
Perfect.
that implies all the side streets. We're planning on removing the physical meters once the bylaw is fully updated. So what Director Costello brought forward this evening was an interim arrangement so we can enforce now, but a more fulsome update of the bylaw will come forward. And once council adopts a new parking bylaw, then we can remove the meters on street.
And sorry, again, a timeline on that?
Carrie, we're looking at December, January for the bylaw. For the bylaw.
That's for the bylaw, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I would project that the meters will be removed over the winter time.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Alford and then Councillor Brennan.
I'm going to try this again. I support staff's recommendations 1, 3, and 4, but I have some questions with regard to 2. Council were contemplating paid versus free parking. The DBA, in their letter of August 19th, made the case that there should be increased parking fees to offset increased enforcement that they recommended. So, and during the DBA discussions over this, before they made their recommendations, they felt to taxpayers as downtown parking enforcement could not revenue to a lesser degree. Still can't hear me.
We're getting most of it, but not all of it.
Okay,
Maybe Councillor McGuire has a suggestion. Does he? Is that why you put your hand up?
I could make a suggestion. I was going to make a comment.
Okay.
Maybe phoning in would be the option, because then you could do the video. I think there's something wrong with your mic because the video isn't cutting out. It's just the sound.
I'm gonna have to go off, and then I'll be back.
We'll come back to you. Councillor Brennan is next.
Yeah, that's too bad. No, I just wanted to confirm what this is doing, in fact, is just confirming our discussion from whenever it was in September about the 2-hour free parking. We're just changing what we need to change. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Costello. I was surprised how specific our parking bylaw is for certain types of parking on certain streets and all the rest. I was wondering if there's any opportunity to streamline or reduce how specific it is when we do our, when you guys are doing the other overhaul in the future.
Absolutely, and I hope it does streamline it. Councillor McGuire, I concur.
Okay, thanks.
While we're waiting, maybe briefly for Councillor Alford to come back. Again, we're all interested in the future bylaw that's coming, I guess. Will there be anything, have we considered anything specific around electric cars and their ability to park in the downtown or in some way? And if not, could you consider that as you develop the new, just to see if there's some preference for those with electric vehicles for parking.
Nope, that's a great suggestion, Councillor McKenna, and it's suggestions like that and policy pieces that will come forward to council for consideration before the final bylaw is brought forward. So I will put that on our suggestion list.
So with the exception of Councillor Alford, I think most of us are in agreement with this. Have you been able to call back in, Councillor Alford, using audio? I do know she was making a point regarding the BIA's feedback on this. It's unfortunate.
I don't see her coming back in. I'm just watching for a text from her right now.
Councillor
Mr. Chair?
Dwyer? Yes.
Perhaps if she gets the opportunity to join us at the council meeting after this meeting, perhaps we could award her the opportunity to speak to there. I believe there usually is a call for other comments on the item before a vote.
Yeah, and we could come back. Yes, that's a great suggestion. So if we're okay, we'll move along to seeing most of us have supported 8C. We're going to move on to the Flying Club lease agreement resolution. And again, this was something that Councillor Alford and others are keenly interested in. However, we'll ask CEO Morris to speak to it at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer a suggestion if we could go on to E. I know Councillor Alford did have comments about
Yes.
Flying Club. E and F, maybe less so.
And I don't see any objections there. So we'll just defer that and go right on to the E, committee appointments.
Thank you. Tonight I'm here seeking council approval to appoint Dorothy Hudson to the Community Improvement Program Evaluation Committee. Dorothy is a member of the Municipal Heritage Committee and would be attending the meetings on behalf of the MHC to provide input on behalf of MHC. So if council is supportive tonight, the request is to bring forward a resolution to tonight's council meeting to have her appointed.
Any comments or questions? A lot of nodding heads. I think we're good with that, and there's council support for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we could go to 8G, the student appointments. You'll notice I will come back to 8F, but we came out of in-camera, and Deputy Clerk Bennett, are you going to speak to that one as well? It's
Yes,
a priority item we just added.
Yes, thank you. Tonight I'm here to seek council approval to appoint 2 student counselors as members for this school year. Staff did seek resumes and essays from students in the community that are interested in local government, and we sought input from our various high schools, including St. John's in Perth, who have students that attend there. And we received 2 essays back from 2 students at the Smith Falls District Collegiate Institute. The first student is Sarah Lagarde, and Sarah's in grade 9 at SFDCI and has shown interest in being appointed as a student counselor, as well as Carter Hughes. And Carter Hughes is a grade 10 student at SFDCI, who's also shared interest. Both students have received letters of support from their principal. And if council is supportive, we'd like to bring forward a resolution to have these 2 student counselors appointed so that they can join the meetings and provide input on behalf of our youth in the community.
And again, any comments or questions, all thumbs up. We're delighted with their interest, and we welcome going through the next steps to get them as student council members to our council.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to come back to 8F, the there's Councillor Alford. And are you connected now, Councillor Alford? I see you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So, all right, we had moved on from the parking bylaw report, Councillor Alford. It was suggested that during the regular council meeting, when that comes up, there will be an opportunity for any comments or questions. And if you want to carry your thoughts forward at that time, you'd be welcome to. but we're at 8D, the Flying Club Lease Agreement Resolution. CEO Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So council members may recall back in July 6th, in fact, council passed a resolution to essentially place a moratorium on executing new airport hangar leases. And the reason for that was to initiate a dialogue around the broader operating agreement between the town, the township, and the Smiths Falls Flying Club. Since that time, we've had a number of interactions with the Flying Club, a couple of meetings, we've exchanged information. We have what we believe is all of the financial information that was requested of them. So at this point, I'll be meeting later this week with my counterpart in Montague, and we'll draft kinds of the terms of reference, so to speak, for the review. And then we'll bring that back for a committee to consider. So I would submit to you that we're on our way to entering those discussions about updating the agreement. My sense is that the executive of the Flying Club understand now what the councils are trying to achieve. So I think we've paved the way, so to speak, for those discussions to occur. At the same time, there are 9 leases that expired at the end of 2019. So the owners of the hangars upon which that sit on top of the lease land are naturally wondering when they can enter the lease, because they're currently occupying those spaces, hangar spaces. So we've been asked, and my recommendation as staff is to forge ahead and sign the 9 leases that expired at the end of last year. And so what that would require would be a removal or of the resolution that was passed in July, rescinding it basically, so that we can go back to entering leases up to the satisfaction of the mayor and myself. So I'll pause there and answer any questions that might arise.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Councillor Alfred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have some difficulty with this one. Certainly in June the 17th, the Airport Commission requested the information from the Flying Club in keeping with the 92 agreement, so that the review could begin on updating that agreement. And I say some of this for the benefit of some of my colleagues who are not on that committee, so may not have a complete understanding of how this all works. So we wanted to update that agreement because it is nearly 30 years old, and we asked for the information from the Flying Club. And I think now, as Mr. Morris mentioned, we've got pretty much all of that we need to be able to move forward. And I just want to make sure that my colleagues and for those watching understand that according to this agreement, the Smiths Falls Flying Club retains all the revenue generated from the airport in exchange for their capable management of that airport. But that also includes the income that come from these 21-year leases that we're discussing. Montague Township receives the property taxes resulting from approximately 55 hangars on the property, and Smiths Falls does not receive any revenue from the operation of the airport, but does fund 75% of both the operating and capital expenditures, and Montague is responsible for the balance, the 25%. Mr. Morris has gone through the fact that in June we were asked to, and I'm not sure where these 9 at the end of the 9 that ran out at the end of 2019. I hadn't heard about those till just lately. I know we signed some just before we rescinded the delegated authority. July, we approved a hangar lease for Mr. Penna, even though we had reservations at the time. And this agreement has not been revisited by any previous council that I know of. And it is due diligence on our part to ensure that these agreements are still in the best interest of Smiths Falls. It certainly is not the fault of the Smiths Falls Flying Club, certainly not the fault of the current executive. It's the municipality who is responsible for asking for the information under the terms of the agreement, and this council's finally getting around to it. On August the 10th, there was another lease brought to us, and according to the minutes, the majority of council were not in favor of executing that new hangar lease until we had a new agreement. So now it's the middle of November. We have 9 more leases, which is why this resolution is being proposed tonight. We still don't have an agreement. I acknowledge that we're possibly in a better place with in terms of the conversations with the Smiths Falls Flying Club, but I'm not prepared to approve leases until that agreement is redone. Keep in mind, for 30 years, no one has looked at this. No one has dealt with it. And I'm of the opinion that this is due diligence with regard to this agreement to make and it also does put the people's feet to the fire, the 2 municipalities, to work with the Smiths Falls Flying Club to correct this 30-year oversight and put clear language into the terms and conditions and a process by which to review those terms and conditions on an ongoing basis. And Mr. Morris mentioned that there will be terms of reference to go into discussions now with the Smiths Falls Flying Club to get this new agreement. But again, we rescinded delegated authority for a reason. We reinforced that again later, and now we still don't have an agreement, and yet we are, the suggestion is that we sign 9 more leases. So that's my, that's my thoughts on this.
Councillor Brennan. What? Okay.
Was there somebody else?
No, I just wondered if there was going to be a response to, I should have allowed CAO Morris if he wanted to.
Sure.
To respond to Councillor Alford's comments.
I think at this point, Mr. Chair, the only comment I can offer is Councillor Alford's summary of the situation is absolutely accurate. We don't yet have a new agreement, but we're hopeful that we're working in a collaborative way towards a new agreement. And I think the issue here is we had a request from the Flying Club to move forward with several long expired lease agreements. And because the occupants are still occupying the hangar, we felt it was appropriate to formalize that occupation through a lease agreement. Now, I mean, council does have the latitude to discuss changes to the agreement if that were a more comfortable position for council to take. We have had a legal council review of the agreement, and there are a few things that would modernize the agreement and perhaps put additional protections in place. So my suggestion would, if committee supports this, would be to rescind the previous resolution, but make it contingent upon the agreements being to the satisfaction of the CAO and the mayor. That would allow us latitude to clean up some of the old language in the agreement. So I would offer that as food for thought.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Okay, thanks for that, CO Morrison. I support your recommendation, and I appreciate and hear what Councillor Alford's saying. However, I think that you know, I don't want to hold anybody's feet to the fire. I want to get a collaborative agreement with the Flying Club, and part of that's going to be going forward in the future of the airport, because there's going to be significant infrastructure needs, and so we need to work together with them. And for the sake of argument, I would support what CO Morris is saying in terms of the 9 leases that have been sitting there waiting. And going forward from that, let's get a new agreement together, and let's figure out how we're going to address the flying clubs or the airport's needs going forward in the next 15, 20 years. I will say that a few years ago, probably 10 years ago at least, Valley Heartland sponsored a economic impact study from a firm in West as Ericsson, and I think they identified that the airport, with the activity out there, generated about $1 million in economic development activity with both our communities. So we want to keep the airport. We want to make sure that we have a good relationship with the flying club, and I trust the mayor of our town and Reeve Dodson and the CEOs to come up with something to bring to us and make something work here.
Thank you. Mayor Panko, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Well, I agree in principle with Councillor Alford that there's some merit in holding leases as leverage in negotiations. I think from a practical standpoint, these are hangars that these hangar owners have built, are housing their airplanes in, and from a practical standpoint, I don't think it's fair to prevent them from occupying the hangars that they have invested in, have utilized in many cases for decades. I also believe that it impacts the tone of negotiations, and I think it may set us off on the wrong foot when it comes to negotiating a new agreement with the flying club. So I'll support the recommendation, and I think, I mean, this is it's a mutually beneficial to Smith Falls and Montague and the Flying Club that we have a sustainable agreement for the airport, and I think the one we have right now doesn't speak well to the sustainability of that airport for all parties over the long term. I think, as Councillor Brennan indicated, there's some long-term capital needs that we will be may not be this council, but a future council will be dealing with, and I believe it's responsible for us to renegotiate this agreement to ensure that there's fairness and parity to all parties. And we do commit dollars every year, but I think about $27,000 for the operating expenses and some capital improvements at the airport. The day will come when that number is going to be much larger, and I think this council or future councils would have a very difficult time committing to significant capital improvements when it's only a very small portion of our residents who actually are members of the Flying Club and utilize the airport. So I think there's very strong merit and all the reason in the world to renegotiate this agreement. But I do not believe that holding back on these hangar leases is going to be have a positive impact on those negotiations. So I support the recommendation of our CAO.
If I may just jump in while no one's hand is up. There were two things I wanted to mention. One is I am surprised that they were 2019 agreements. And I'm not saying why weren't they brought forward sooner, but there was quite a few months in there, plus COVID, that may have delayed them coming to our attention. But that would have been very helpful to either have those cleaned up earlier before we put this in place. And I don't hear Councillor Alford or anyone arguing against a good modernized agreement. And so a lot of defense is going around getting a good agreement. I think we all are in on that. It was my understanding one of the reasons we took a pause on renewing agreements, renewing lease agreements was that not everyone was providing all the information we needed to set the baseline for a new agreement. And this was a way of getting everyone's attention and showing them how serious Smith Falls was, this council in particular, in getting to an agreement. And here we are in November, and we haven't really even, and again, COVID does play a factor, it always has, in any of the timeliness of something. But I'm not sure that we do have the attention or the willingness of our partners yet to move forward. But I'm hearing the mayor and the CEO suggesting that the time is right, and this is a stumbling block in getting in the way. So just the comments about that, and I'll stop there. Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, CEO Morris. I'm wondering, is there an opportunity that we could enter into a month-by-month lease with these 9 outdated agreements so that when the new terms of reference comes into place and the new lease agreements come into place, we can swap them onto the new plan? I understand the difficulties of not having a lease right now, but I don't know if giving up our leverage on this one. I think it has got their attention, and I'm nervous about letting go of that. So.
CEO Morris.
Through the chair, yeah, I think there is a possibility. The current lease agreements are somewhat silent on what happens when the expiry date is reached. So one of the things we'd like to clean up in the new agreement is to provide language around rights after the agreements expire. So there's a couple of approaches we could take if council wanted, some assurance. We could do a month to month, or we could extend it for, I would say at this point, 18 months, since we're 10 months beyond the expiration of the previous one. So in some form or fashion, we could extend it so that they have a legal right to be in the hangar, but on a shorter term basis, if that's something council wanted us to pursue. So one suggestion would be an 18-month, which provides time for the parties to get this squared away.
I understand. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I like that idea. Like Councillor Alford, I was worried about just negotiating lease when we don't have this completely finished. But I think I like what CEO Morris just suggested.
Any other comments on that suggestion, Councillor Alford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I could agree to a shorter term. I don't know about 18 months. I'm not sure why it would take 18 months. I could accept that much more quickly than I can signing 9 more for 21 years. Once we sign these for 21 years without a renewed agreement, without a renewed lease, we're committing ourselves for another 21 years. So I would be open to a shorter term, as Councillor McGuire suggested. I'm not sure 18 months, it would need to be 18 months. These are not complicated. This is not a complicated agreement. I haven't read the lease agreement, but I think it's a 1-pager, so it can't be that complicated. So I'm not sure why it would take 18 months. Maybe CEO Morris can advise of the rationale for the timing of the 18 months.
Yep. Perhaps if I can, Mr. Chair, I'll just do a better job of explaining. So because they expired in December of last year, we're already 10 months into an extension. So 18 months would give us 8 months effectively to come up with a new deal.
Okay, I understand. Mayor Penko, you had your hand up.
Well, that was, yeah, just going to add that clarity. And I guess if we maybe set a date of June 30th, 2021, that would be.
I'm seeing nodding. Is there a consensus on council that we would rescind the bylaw, which we would have to do? We would move ahead, allowing the CEO and mayor to extend these lease agreements for another 8 months. And in the meantime, with a lot of goodwill and open mind and good spirit, we'll renew or renegotiate a positive agreement with all the parties involved. Mayor Panko?
I'm just wondering if we could get agreement that I don't know if there's more leases next year or whatever, but just to save having to deal with the same question and potentially have people who are in limbo, could we simply have an agreement that we would renew leases? Anything coming due would renew until June 30th of next year. So we have consistency and they all come due at the same time.
I'm seeing nodding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that clear, Deputy Clerk Bennett and CEO Morris, that direction from council?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your passion around this important subject. Now we're moving on. Councillor Alfred, while you stepped away, we went ahead and did the committee appointment and the student council appointments. And what we've left on the table is the 8F, the 2010 Boundary Adjustment Agreement with our friends in Montague Township. And CEO Morris, I think you're going to speak to your report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to take you back in time to 2009. Back then, COVID was unheard of, and the OPP signaled their intention to build their Southeast Region headquarters here in Smiths Falls. So at the time, they picked a site, which at the time was in Montague Township, and it was on the actual footprint of the Rideau Regional Center that had just closed a year or so before. So in order to make that happen, one of the criteria for the OPP was to have piped services. So discussions began in February of 2009, concluded around November of 2009, and it resulted in an agreement with our neighbors and the County of Lanark to essentially annex the property formerly known as the Rideau Regional Center. That opened the way for the OPP to build their facility that we see today. So, and I must say that the county was involved because the section of Highway 43 along the stretch of property was also transferred within the jurisdiction of the town of Smiths Falls. So with that in clear view, the minister at the time issued a restructuring order, and in it referenced two documents. One was a agreement between a boundary adjustment agreement, which laid out the terms of the transfer of municipal jurisdiction. That was between the county, the township, and the town. And there was a supplemental secondary agreement called a revenue sharing agreement. And in that agreement, it's very simple. It's attached to the report. It basically states that the town would pay the township 50% of property taxes collected in perpetuity. That's a long time. So it also stated that the minimum threshold would be just north of $50,000, which was the equivalent of the, I guess it would have been payment in lieu of taxes that they received when it was a provincial government facility. So if we fast forward to today, and exactly, well, almost a month ago, we had a presentation from Graham Bird of Graham Bird Associates Group with a very exciting and ambitious plan to redevelop what we now call the Gallipo Center property. And fairly large undertaking, of course, and it's all fresh in our minds. So at this point, staff are working on two things. One is we committed to bring back a roadmap of sorts in terms of the planning processes that have to be undertaken to see this to fruition. That's being worked on. We hope to have a draft, or we hope to have a report for you next week. And at the same time, there's a realization that the present revenue sharing agreement could be problematic in terms of revenue generated from this site to pay for services and so on that the town would provide in perpetuity. So our recommendation to committee is to appoint a negotiating team or a discussion team and invite our neighbors and friends in Montague to have a discussion about the terms of the revenue sharing agreement. I can tell you I've reached out to the ministry and they suggested that they would not have any involvement in this discussion since the revenue sharing is supplemental to the restructuring order issued by the minister. So perhaps I'll pause at that point and answer any questions you might have, but essentially we're suggesting we appoint the mayor, 2 members of council, myself, to invite Montague to a discussion.
Okay, thank you, CEO Morris. I have Councillor Brannan and then Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, just one question. Have we, on a staff level, reached out to Montague?
We have, yes.
Okay. I'd be interested in serving on that.
Thank you, Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's always worth trying. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'd be able to negotiate this. I do think it's an outrageously unusual agreement that we have in place now. Having now worked in 3 separate municipalities and kind of negotiated and reviewed these cost sharing arrangements for annexation, this is in a league of its own, and I can appreciate that. At the time, there was a great deal of interest in ensuring that we secured OPP Eastern Ontario headquarters within the community, and I don't think that is. I don't think ultimately it was a wrong idea to agree to what we have agreed to, but I think that given that the landscape has changed dramatically, I think it's worth going back to renegotiate again. And like Councillor Brennan, I too would like to voice an interest in sitting on this committee. Like I said, I mean, this is not my first rodeo. Annexation and cost sharing agreements for things like this are kind of my daily bread and butter. And so I have a great deal of experience and interest that I think I could bring to the table in negotiating it.
Thank you, Councillor Dwyer. Councillor Alfred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I like Councillor Dwyer. The in perpetuity means forever. It's just a fancy word for forever. There is no end date on this deal that we revenue sharing with Montague. Even the Walmart property, when that annexation took, I believe that was only a 20-year deal to compensate that township for their land. The proposed development is very exciting and ambitious, but this is a huge undertaking, probably the biggest one that Smith Falls would do, and the costs are incredible to try and do that over any length of time. So that should not be coming solely out of the pockets of the current and future taxpayers of Smith Falls. So I think this is a huge stumbling block for the development to move forward. And so I'm hopeful too, cautiously optimistic that Montague can see their way clear to coming up with a path forward for a better agreement and a path forward for this development. I also would be interested in being on the negotiating team. I just find this incredibly interesting and exciting undertaking, but I can't get past the revenue sharing to enjoy what that development might be in the future. So it is. I've had I do not do a lot of annexations, but I've had a lot of experience in negotiating contracts.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred.
I'm not sure how we're going to drive who's going, who's not.
Anyone else want to speak to this topic? If I may, I just have a question. Would Lanark County have any role either as an observer or a participant in any negotiations at this point? CAO Morris, do you have a sense of that?
So really good question. I haven't reached out directly to the county. I can certainly do that. My sense is their involvement would be a much lesser involvement, only because we're not, based on my recommendation, we're not renegotiating the boundary adjustment. We're only renegotiating the revenue sharing that supplements the boundary adjustment agreement, which the county was not part of that agreement.
Thank you. And my second question, we are not in a dispute with anyone regarding this at this point, but there is in the agreement a dispute resolution. And my question is, should negotiations not go the way either party would like, or parties, the item 12, the dispute resolution clause, would that be an appropriate tool for us to consider? Or is it referring to another dispute regarding this resolution? There is a mechanism, as I say, we're not in a dispute with anyone. We're having a conversation and a negotiation. But if that does not work out for whatever reason, there is a mechanism to resolve this dispute through the use of an arbitrator. And my question is, and we don't need it tonight, but my question is would that clause kick in at the kind of discussions that we're considering having?
Yeah,
Yes,
Mr. Chair, I'm just breezing through it. That clause 12 deals with the restructuring agreement, or the boundary adjustment, not the second revenue sharing agreement.
Okay.
So we would look for an interpretation of whether there's a legal term, but whether they exist together as opposed to separately. So we can certainly look into that for you.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Chair, you make an excellent point. And even outside of the terms of the existing cost sharing agreement, I mean, if Montague is interested in participating in this conversation, then perhaps it's in everybody's best interest to cost share a mediator. Anyways, just to kind of help the conversation develop a little bit of structure and a framework. I think there could be great benefit in that. And I mean, maybe there's opportunity to reassess that once we have an initial kickoff meeting with them. I mean, that might give us a great sense about what the tone is, or if there's a clear middle ground from the beginning, or if we're operating at like opposite ends of the spectrum, and you know, it's going to take us a long time to get to the middle. But I think notwithstanding the existing agreement, it's probably not a bad idea to have a moderator at play.
Okay, okay, thank you. Are there any other members of council we have 3 members who put their hand up, thrown their hat in the ring. Is there anyone else? In the past, sometimes when there's more interest than there are openings, sometimes you draw the name out of a hat, and sometimes it's the mayor looking at the big picture and determining what's in the best interests would get us the best team going forward. So I would always suggest to the mayor, if he doesn't mind, that you look at the skill set and the experience and you take that into consideration rather than just pulling names randomly from a hat. So you've got 3 good candidates that have put their names forward, and I'll leave that up to you, Your Worship, to sort out.
Thank you.
It looks like there's an agreement on moving forward with the recommendation on the report from C.O. Morris. So thank you for that. Nothing else on that topic. I believe that brings us to the adjournment and a motion to adjourn. Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Allen. All in favor? Carried. We'll take a short pause between 5 minutes between these 2 meetings. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, November 16th. We have all members of council here this evening. I want to make one announcement tonight. It's National Housing Day is coming up on November 22nd. And to recognize this day, Lanark County Housing will be sharing information from local housing and homelessness initiatives as we reflect on the challenges that many people face in finding a safe and affordable place to call home. Social Service Relief Fund is providing extra levels of relief for people who are struggling to pay their rent, utility bills, and even mortgages during this pandemic. So please feel free to contact Lanark County Housing if you feel you may be in a situation where they could provide you with some degree of assistance. It's either on Facebook or you can call them at 267-4200, extension 2140. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I hear none. We no delegations, no adoption of minutes. Reports. I'm going to start with Councillor Dwyer, please.
Just a short one today, thank you. So I just wanted to thank everyone for participating in Real's non-harvest dinner auction. It was a great success this year and it was a lot of fun, although I will say it was not nearly as much fun as elbowing Lorraine away from the good stuff at the table last year. So I very much look forward to participating in it again next year, hopefully in person. But thank you all for participating. I also wanted to take a moment to give a huge shout out to the girls at the Child Development Center. Right now, we are not having CDC board meetings for obvious reasons. Our staff are terribly overworked with the new COVID protocols for the littles, and they are really, truly, genuinely working their butts off. I know that it's much appreciated by all the parents that are using the program, down to the fact that the girls have, they're taking polls to determine whether or not there's a need for support services for PA days for parents who are still working. So it's such a valuable program in our community. And I know that sometimes it doesn't seem like it's a revenue neutral or a cost generating service in the community, but as a working parent, I can truly say that there's a greater community value in providing this service, and our ECEs are so undervalued within the community. So I just want to give a great big thank you to them for all their hard work, particularly during the time of COVID.
Thank you very much. Councillor McGuire, you're up next. Nothing this evening. Councillor McKenna? No. Councillor Allen?
Yes, just one. The Railway Museum of Eastern Ontario has been very busy. They've continued their restoration work. Our beautiful dining car is now in storage for the winter. And we're partnering with the Town of Smith Falls Tourism Department for their Merry and Bright Gift Box program, and have been selling our train merchandise through this program as well as our online store. We also have ordered gift cards to sell online as well, and we're hoping these initiatives will help holiday shoppers find unique items as well as support our wonderful museum. People can find out more information at rmeo.org or on our Facebook page, or they can contact the museum directly if they wish to do that. And they can order over the phone. And that's all for tonight.
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor Alford? Nothing. Councillor Brennan? Passing as well. Okay, and I just have one myself and just want to reflect back on November 11th and wanted to recognize the efforts of our Legion, your TV, Johnny Van Dusen, everybody who was there to ensure that despite the challenges of COVID, that Remembrance Day was still a very respectful and honorable event. Of course, very limited in numbers, but thanks to the technologies available today, I think it enabled everyone in our community to still participate from a distance and still, even on a one-on-one or a family basis, attend the cenotaph to pay respects. So it's challenging times. The Legion really adapted extremely well. So I congratulate President Ken Manuel and the executive and everyone involved in making sure that we still have the opportunity to pay our all respects due for those who walked before us and made the lives that we have today possible. Moving into bylaws, Councillor Brennan, you have our first bylaw.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community grants funding agreement with Rideau Roundtable be read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community grants funding agreement with Rideau Roundtable be read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? And that's carried. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, this is a presentation we had from our friend Peter Au from the Rideau Roundtable some time ago, and the community grant funding is in the amount of $4,630. It's going to allow them to contribute to the hiring of an intern for a shoreline restoration and urban forest program. Quite an exciting program. So we're happy to contribute to that. And they've also got support from the National Resources Internship Program. And it's going to include the creation of shoreline restoration demonstration site. Will provide information respecting the benefits of forested and nature-based approaches to inspire community to restore natural shorelines. And as Councillor McGuire mentioned when we were talking about this earlier, there's so much nature along our beautiful Rideau Canal, and I think this is a great project, so I know everybody agrees.
Great. Thank you very much. Any further comment? May I have a third reading, please?
Sure. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community grants funding agreement with Rideau Roundtable be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 101-91-2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community grants funding agreement with the Rideau Roundtable be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10191-2020. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Dwyer, you have the next bylaw.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 7252-97, being a bylaw to regulate and control the parking of vehicles in the town of Smiths Falls, be read a first time and taken and read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 7252-97, being a bylaw to regulate and control the parking of vehicles in the town of Smiths Falls, be read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you. So further to discussions that council had in September, we had voted to make some changes to how we regulate parking, particularly in the downtown. So this bylaw is going to ratify those changes to enact non-metered parking downtown, as well as to recognize parallel parking spaces on Beckwith Street. And we are excited that this bylaw is coming forward, although we acknowledge that there will probably be a comprehensive review of the bylaw, which dates from 1997 in the not too distant future.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Alford. Oh, you're quiet.
Thank you, Your Worship. I unfortunately had technical difficulties and missed the discussion over Director Costello's report. So anything I might say now is probably moot, but I agreed with everything except to leave the fines at $5 and $20, because as the DBA pointed out in their, when we discussed this, as Councillor Dwyer referenced, when we were talking about free versus paid parking, that the DBA feels strongly that enforcement needs to be stepped up. And they suggested, the DBA suggested that the fines, well, we don't have the option any longer to garner revenue through parking fees, that fines would be the only alternative we would have to generate some revenue in terms of getting increased enforcement. As I said, my comments are probably moot, because if we're at this point at council and it's going forward, I'm going to assume, having not heard the discussion, that those fines were fine with the rest of council.
Thank you. And I'll comment that it, the agreement was to move ahead with the recommendation of staff, but I think it's consistent, I think, across council. This will be a more comprehensive review in the very near future, probably December or January. May I have the third reading, please?
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to amend bylaw 7252-97, being a bylaw to regulate and control the parking of vehicles in the town of Smiths Falls, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10192-2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, Councillor Brennan, that the bylaw to amend bylaw 7252-97, being a bylaw to regulate and control the parking of vehicles in the town of Smiths Falls, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10192-2020. All in favor? Opposed? Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. That's it for our bylaws. On to our miscellaneous motions, and Councillor McGuire, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Motion 8.1 is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Allen that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls award request for proposal 20-ED-02 to Iron and Ivory for the design and mock-up of storefront facade renderings of 20 buildings on Beckwith Street, along with recommended mural placements and policy support in the amount of $48,000 net HST.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor McGuire?
So this is an exciting project that our economic development team found a grant for from the Rural Economic Development Fund, or I think that's what RED stands for. So it's great. It's matching funds. It's going to get 20 facades done. A big challenge for businesses in the downtown core is that they've been whitewashed for so many years with, you know, whatever was modern and flashy, that it's really hard to go back to where it started. And that's really where the architecture of the building belongs. It's when you see those buildings that really pop, it's usually because the features give that credit to the original design of the building. So hopefully with this, we'll be able to work with some business owners downtown, get them some CIP money, and just add another dimension to this Beckwith Street revitalization.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, moved by Councillor McGuire, second by Councillor Allen. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls award request for proposal 20-ED-02 to Iron and Ivory for the design and mock-up of the storefront facade renderings 20 buildings on Beckwith Street, along with the recommended mural placements and policy support in the amount of $48,000 net HST. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Alfred, you're up next.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls award tender 20-CS-006 snow clearing contract for the Via Rail Station to Campbell's Trucking Limited for a period of 5 years, expiring in the spring of 2025 at an annual cost of $28,500 plus HST for a total of $142,500.
And thank you. Discussion, Councillor Alford?
Campbell's Trucking has had this contract for the past 5 years, and while it was tendered, they had the lower bid and are familiar with the requirements at the Via Station. So,
thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor McKenna. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls award tender 20-CS-006 snow clearing contract for the Via Rail Station to Campbell's Trucking Limited for a period of 5 years, expiring in the spring of 2025, an annual cost of $28,500 plus HST for a total of $142,500. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor McKenna, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls rescind Resolution 2020-07-158, being a resolution to not approve any further hanging lease agreements and remove the delegated authority of the mayor and clerk to authorize transfer lease agreements until the 1992 lease agreement is updated and approved by bylaw. And further, that council supports extending all pending agreement extensions for a term ending June 30th, 2021, and to the satisfaction of the Chief Administrative Officer and the Mayor.
discussion?
Yes, Your Worship. We are in active negotiations with our friends at the airport and Montague to update the lease agreement and update the agreement with the airport. And while we were doing that, it's very out of date. This was a move. Council wanted to put a pause on new lease agreements until we had until the negotiations move along further. I think we're at a place now, council has agreed that all the parties are on board and wanting to see a resolution soon. This will tidy up some lease agreements that are outstanding until such time as we have a new agreement.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment? Okay, it's moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Dwyer. The Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls rescind Resolution 2020-07-158, being a resolution to not approve any further hangar lease agreements and remove the delegated authority of the mayor and clerk to authorize transfer lease agreements until the 1992 lease agreement is updated and approved by bylaw. And further, that council is extending all pending agreement extensions for a term ending June 30th, 2021, and to the satisfaction of the Chief Administrative Officer and the Mayor. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And Councillor Allen, you have the committee appointment up next.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire, recommend that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint Dorothy Hudson to the Community Improvement Plan Evaluation Committee as the representative for the Municipal Heritage Committee.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen. Oh, sorry, discussion, Councillor Allen.
Yeah, Dorothy sits on our Municipal Heritage Committee and has been a member, very actively involved in the Heritage Symposium, and was quite interested in being part of this committee. And what they're looking for is just having someone on that evaluation committee that has a sense of the heritage attributes of the buildings that they're going to be looking at. And I think Dorothy will do a great job.
Wonderful. Any further comment? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor McGuire. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint Dorothy Hudson to the Community Improvement Plan Evaluation Committee as a representative from the Municipal Heritage Committee. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And Councillor McKenna, you have item 8.5.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McGuire, that council direct staff to initiate discussions with Montague Township to review the terms of the 2010 boundary adjustment agreement between the two parties.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor McKenna.
Yes, as we learned in the cow and a month ago, there's considerable development being considered at the Gallipo Center property. And it is timely that we revisit the agreement with Montague Township regarding the revenue sharing agreement between the two parties. And council is directing staff, the mayor and two council members to go forward and see if we can come to an updated agreement with our friends in Montague.
Thank you. Any further comment? Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor McGuire. The Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls directs staff to initiate discussions with Montague Township to review the terms of the 2010 boundary adjustment agreement. All in favor? That's carried. And Councillor Dwyer, you have the final motion.
Sorry, flicking screens. Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint Sarah Lagarde and Carter Hughes as student counselors for the 2019-2020 school term.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer?
Every year, we find two Eager Beaver high school students to come learn about municipal government, but also to provide their valuable feedback on decision-making that we make. Nadine, year after year, impresses us with the students that she is able to recruit to the program. and we are so grateful to have them participating in our meetings. So with that, we are hopeful that Sarah and Carter will join us and be able to contribute greatly to our discussions.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, C.M. Morris.
Your Worship, I just noticed the wording in the motion states the 2019-2020 school term. I believe that should be 2020-2021 school term. I think that's a typo.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
No, that's great. And I want to give a shout out to my former colleague, former Councillor Kenny Graham, who brought this forward originally. And over the years, we've had some great kids, and you know, we want to hear from them. We want to hear what they have to say and what they think. So thank you, Kenny, for doing this.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, second by Councillor McGuire. The Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls appoint Sarah Lagarde and Carter Hughes as student councillors for the 2020-2021 school term. All in favor? That's carried. Inquiries and announcements. Councillor McKenna.
I just wanted to let my colleagues on council know and our listeners know that it was 65 years ago this month that a local institution started up in Smith Falls, and seeing that this is not trivia, I won't ask you to guess what it was. But 65 years ago this month, CJET radio station started in Smith Falls, and it's gone through a number of iterations, but it was a mainstay during my childhood, and a lot of legends, and they've been a valuable community service, and they remain so, even though they're called Jack, I still refer to them as the Jet at CJET. And just wanted to congratulate them. Radio's played an important role through many seasons, especially ice storms and pandemics. And so I congratulate our friends at CJET radio station on their 65th anniversary.
Great, thank you. And I think Councillor Brennan has something to share.
I have a little question, and actually it's apropos because we had a discussion about our friends in Montague, so it's a Montague question actually. So the question is, and everyone knows this because I used to go tobogganing there as a kid, Numigate. Who knows how Numigate got its name?
Councillor McKenna.
No, Peter.
There was a number of gates present.
Nope. So I never knew this, and you're going to be astounded.
Pardon?
So the Numigate was named in 1840, and it was named by the self-elected postmaster John Ferguson, and he was also actually the clerk of the township in 1840. So what Numigate is Montague jumbled. What I mean is he took the letters of Montague and made another name. Numigate. I never knew that.
Love it. It's great.
I hope our friends from Montague are watching this evening.
They just learned something.
Thank you. Any further inquiries or announcements? No? Okay, our motion for adjournment is with Councillor McKenna, please. Oh, you're muted, Peter.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alford, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 6:33 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Before I adjourn, who's got the next trivia question? Look for a volunteer.
I love them.
Anna, okay, thank you.
You got good ones, Peter.
Well, Numigate was the best.
All right, who seconded the adjournment, Peter? Sorry.
Councillor Alford.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Alford. This council adjourns proceedings at 6:34 p.m. and stands so adjourned until that's duly called meeting of council. All in favor?